Have you ever heard a song and thought, wow, that sounds insane. I wish I knew how to recreate that exact sound in my own tracks. That used to be me. I'd hear a crazy synth or bass line, open up my DAW, try to recreate it, and end up frustrated with a headache. But after years of trial and error, I cracked the code. I came up with a step-by-step system that allows you to recreate any sound that you hear. So if you're tired of struggling with sound design, I get you, but I'm about to show you exactly how to do it. Let's get into it. Alright, so before we begin, we need to shift our mindset on how we recreate sounds, because the thing is, most people, they'll kind of guess and tweak knobs until they eventually come out with something good, but that's not how you do it. Instead, we're going to use a very specific system that will allow you to recreate any sound that you hear. Let's get into it. So here is your sound design framework. Number one is oscillator. This is the raw sound, the wavetable. This could be a sine wave, a square wave, a saw wave, etc. It's what generates the sound, and it's the first step because this is going to make up about 80% of the sound typically. So the oscillator is where it all starts. So the second thing here is amplitude. This is just the volume of the sound over time. So does the sound fade in? Is it a sharp, plucky type of sound? Does it sustain for a while? And this can be super important to categorize your sound into leads, pads, plucks, etc. Now number three is going to be filter. Of course, the filter can be used to remove certain frequencies or even accentuate certain frequencies depending on how you want the character of the sound to be. Number four is pitch. This is just how high or low the sound goes. And you can also ask yourself questions like, does the sound slide up really fast or pitch down? Or maybe it has a vibrato effect where the pitch is going back and forth really fast. Number five is effects or post-processing. And you can use the effects to add space or weird modulation or interesting textures. This could be chorus, distortion, hyperdimension, compression, reverb, delay, etc. All of these things, all these effects will come together to give your sound the texture you want. And then just a few extra things here. We got modulation and noise. So of course, modulation is just a general term. You can use LFOs and envelopes to modulate certain effects. So let's say you only want a filter to turn on at a certain part in the sound. That's what you can use it for. And the noise usually just means white noise, where you're adding texture and brightness to a sound. Now you don't have to follow every single one of these steps in perfect order. When you're close to the perfect result, you'll often jump back and forth between these steps just to really lock in the tone and the texture. I'll show you how to do that in just a little bit, but for now, just keep this framework in mind. This is your sound design framework. Now you could just leave the video with this information and be good to go. Really, this is all you need, but don't click off the video. The thing is, it's very important to see it in action and see someone recreate sounds. So with that being said, I think it's time we go into the studio and recreate some iconic sounds. Let's do it. Alright, so now we're in FL Studio, and the first sound we're going to be recreating is a sound from Nate Sib Colors. Let me play it. Just that main arpeggiating synth melody. I think that's really beautiful. First thing I want to do is recreate the first part of the melody, just so we have a good reference point. So let's do that real quick. So I'm just listening for that first note there. I think that's D sharp. I think the second one is A sharp, and then maybe an octave up. Okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds good. We just want the first few notes, like I said, as a reference. So now we can get into actually recreating the sounds. So if we listen to the default Serum sounds, it's very sharp sounding, and our reference track is very soft. So with that being said, as I mentioned on the whiteboard, the first thing we want to do is focus on the wavetable. And this is because it will lay the foundation for like 80% of the sound. So with that being said, we can scroll through the different wavetables here with the wavetable position and just find something that sounds more similar to our reference. So right off the bat, just by changing this wavetable position, it already sounds like 80% of the way there. Now it's just a matter of adjusting the amplitude, doing some effects, etc. So let's play with this envelope here. What we can do with this is make it more of a pluck shape. So a little before and after. This is before the pluck shape, and this is after. So we can adjust this to be similar to our reference, probably around here. And I noticed that each note stops a little bit too quickly, so we can fix that by increasing the release here. And so now whenever we release a note, it holds for longer. Now another thing I notice in our reference track is that it's a lot more soft. There's not any sharp clicking sounds like our version here. So to fix that, let's increase the attack, and this is going to create this kind of fade in effect, making it a lot softer. Cool, we're getting closer. And now we can just go to the effects section right here and really just nail down the texture of it. So if we listen closely to this, I can hear this very faint, almost bit crushed type of texture. It's a little bit hard to explain. Like I can hear some weird little noise artifacts and stuff. So I think we should go back to Serum. And maybe what we can do is add a distortion. And on the distortion mode, let's select downsample. Gives it these weird bit crushed artifacts. And we could even turn on the filter here and just low pass it. The original track is also very spaced out, so maybe we can add some reverb to this. And I noticed there's a lot of delay on this as well, so what I'm going to do actually is put this on a mixer track. Perfect. We can go back to the Serum and just continue adjusting the tone and stuff, so maybe adding some noise. And I do think that this sine wave is a little bit too pure, because the sine wave is literally just a single frequency. But if we were to go to the triangle wave instead, which is basically the same thing except with these sharper edges, this will give it more harmonics or upper frequencies, so it might sound more accurate. Let's see. And now we can just go back to the effects and adjust the tone and stuff. I think that's pretty accurate. So from here, now we can just recreate the rest of the melody. Alright, so I just recreated a few of the extra notes from the original track. This is the original, and this is our version. It's pretty accurate. So once again, it's just about adjusting the wavetable, the amplitude, the effects, and then just dialing in the texture from there. Anyway, I think it's time we move on to another sound. Alright, the next sound we're going to be recreating is a synth from a song called Subfocus Solar System. So once again, I'll quickly recreate some of the melody. So first thing, of course, focusing on the wavetable. I definitely think that a saw wave is good, but it needs some detuning. So if we go here to the unison, we can turn this up a little bit, and this is going to create a more wide, lush type of sound. Perfect, and now that we got the wavetable decided, we can start adjusting the movement and the amplitude. So what I'm going to do for this sound, I'm not going to use the envelope this time, I'm going to use the LFO. And I'm going to left click and drag this LFO onto the level here. So now this LFO is controlling the level, right? And we can create some type of shape like this. This is the reason I wanted to use the LFO rather than the envelope, because you have more control over the shape of it. So the synth in the reference track kind of goes, wow, it sounds like a vowel almost. So what we can do to recreate that is go to Serum and select the filter here. And we'll left click and drag this LFO onto the filter. Just a very small vowel effect. And another thing we could do to accentuate that is go to the effects here. And there's this technique where we add an EQ and create two peaks that look like this. Then we can take LFO1 and modulate both of these peaks. There's still a few things we can do though. So I'm going to add some distortion, give it a more gritty type of texture. We can add a little bit of reverb so it kind of washes out. Maybe a little bit of delay as well. Okay, and it's cool, but I feel like the tone still isn't right. So what we can do is we'll keep this saw wave here, but we're going to add a second oscillator, like a second layer on top of it. Yeah, this could work fine. Okay, so after some adjusting, I think I ended up getting the tone right. I also added some noise here. This gives it a slightly different texture. And I even EQ'd out some of the lows because I noticed in the original, there isn't much lows in the synth. So anyway, this is the original. And then this is our version. So play them together. Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I'm happy with it. Once again, just deciding the wavetable, adjusting the amplitude, the filter, and then getting the texture right through the effects, the distortion, etc. That's how you recreate it. Anyway, once again, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so the next sound is from a song called FLMDJ by Playboi Carti. And once again, let's just recreate the melody real quick. let's start recreating this. So there's a few techniques that I have in my mind right now that we could use to recreate this. One of them is just literally taking the LFO, applying it to the pitch, and then making the LFO super fast by adjusting the rate here. But I want to show you a very specific technique that I've used before. So I'm going to go back to the default preset. What we're going to do is actually select sine wave on the wavetable here. And then we're going to enable the second one and select sine wave on this one as well. From here, we're going to make the first one very low in pitch and the second one pretty high. And now that we have this very low octave and a very high octave, what we can do is apply distortion, and it's going to create this really weird, crunchy type of texture. And better yet, this is going to be weird, but we can take this entire melody down by 7 notes. Just like that. And I know that sounds weird, but just watch. What we're going to do now is take this up by +7, the higher octave. Now listen. It creates this really weird, distorted, crunchy type of texture. And now I definitely hear the notes kind of gliding together. So what we can do is enable portamento down here. Let's refer back to our reference. And of course, let's start adjusting it to perfect the tone of it. So I'm gonna enable the noise here to give it some texture. We can play around with different wavetable options. I'm going to use the equalizer to completely cut the low frequencies from this because it's a lead and not a bass. And now really quickly, let's just open another Serum 2 and make a simple bass. So I'll detune this saw wave, add some noise to it, maybe add some distortion, and then a filter. So here's the original. You got to. And this is our version. And the best part about recreating these sounds is that now you can do your own stuff to it to make it your own. And then from there, use it in your own projects. So we could go ahead and apply FM to this, for example. And really start messing with the tones. Anyway, sounds good. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, next sound is the main bass from Knock 2, Feel You Love Me. Alright, cool. That's the melody right there. Let's start recreating the sound. So obviously it's a very harsh, aggressive type of bass. And for that, we're not going to use basic shapes this time. Let's go to the spectral wavetables and maybe select one of these monster ones. As you can tell, it's a very complex wavetable, and it's going to give it that unique, like, aggressive tone. But it sounds kind of thin by itself. Doesn't sound good. So of course, let's enable oscillator B to add another layer to it. And you know what? I think we should do that +7 distortion trick I showed you earlier. So let's go back to the melody. Let's take this down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now we can go back to the second oscillator and take this up 7 semitones. Now that we have a rough version of the wavetables, let's go ahead and affect the amplitude. So I'll take LFO1, apply it to both of these levels, and create a shape that kind of looks like this. Maybe we can add a little bit of noise here for some texture. And even a sub layer. This is specifically for the sub bass, and sometimes if you distort it with these two oscillators, it can sound very nice. Let's go ahead and apply the distortion, and this is going to really transform it. Oh, and I almost forgot, let's apply that filter. We can kind of adjust the octaves here. And I think so far this is sounding pretty accurate, so let's listen. Cool. Cool, now we can just really dial in the texture of it. So the character of our version is not strong enough in my opinion. So what we can do to up the character of it is apply a compressor, turn it on to multiband, and then turn up the gain. So after a few adjustments here and there, I ended up with this. And I think that's pretty accurate. So here's the original. And here's our version. And what about this lead here? I mean, it sounds pretty simple and it's following the same melody, so might as well copy this original melody over. So it sounds like a saw wave with some very subtle detuning. Yeah. And then maybe some distortion. And EQ rolling off the highs. Yeah, that's good enough for me. As always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. And by the way, if you want to, there's going to be a link in the description of a video of me just remaking sounds from my Spotify likes. I'll like listen to random songs and then remake the sounds from it. So if you're interested in that, you can go check that out. And also, if you want to, please subscribe. It would help me a ton. It would help me retire my parents. Anyway, thank you for watching again, and I'll see you in the next one.